Partying for me was my portal into belonging, connection, but it was also how I dealt with grief and how I dealt with sexual frustration. It's how I dealt with uh you know, getting to a new city. How do I find people? It was a solution for so many things for me. And also, I think like many of us along the way, I worked in the music industry and was throwing underground raves and worked in all areas of that, but also, the alcohol and drugs became a part of something that I looked up one day and I was like, when is the last time I've spent a weekend without these things in my system?
Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Teri Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, hey everyone, it's Teri back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. And you are in for a treat today because I have the party coach in the house with us. Evan Cudworth is going to join us on the podcast today and talk about what it is to be a party coach and some of the ways that we can drop the facade of no alcohol means no fun, and we can recreate a new identity that does involve having a good time. So welcome.
Terry, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So Evan reached out. I saw your website and I was like, wow, this is such a fresh and unique way to look at creating this life we don't want to escape from. So tell us how the party coach came to be and, what your mission is.
Beautiful. Well, I have some questions for you, but I will just briefly start with partying for me was my portal into belonging, connection, but it was also how I dealt with grief and how I dealt with sexual frustration. It's how I dealt with uh you know, getting to a new city. How do I find people? It was a solution for so many things for me. And also, I think like many of us along the way, I worked in the music industry and was throwing underground raves and worked in all areas of that, but also, the alcohol and drugs became a part of something that I looked up one day and I was like, when is the last time I've spent a weekend without these things in my system? And it was I have a long journey that we can get into of in and out of sobriety although I don't currently identify as fully sober, I identify as someone who loves to party free of alcohol and substances, but also I'm amoral about the substances. And how do we show up in a way that the party is within us? And maybe we can get a little bit to that because I've created this kind of 7-stage process that allows you to find the party within you. And it's going to be different for every single person.
Bravo. I love that so much because, one of the things that get we just get disconnected from the way that the things that light us up and the fun that we can have and that carefree part of our humanness. And for me, certainly, I wasn't really the party girl. Like I started drinking more socially and I was married, in my early 20s and had a young family and really just used alcohol as the way to enhance the fun. So I always drank, in a social situation, neighborhood, at home, not really in the party scene. I'm 65. So, I could have been part of the 60s and 70s, but that wasn't my gig. But same sense of belonging and coping that you're talking about. And I think for so many of my clients where they stay stuck like I did, I thought my life was going to get smaller when I stopped drinking. And I didn't see the possibility of my life becoming more fun and larger. And so I think that's the most exciting part of exploring this idea of the party within.
Yeah. Well, I first wanted to say I get to talk to many people around this, and you're just glowing and your energy, and I can feel, like, the bigness of your life
Mm.
coming through, even in how you speak. And that is I don't promise that I can, get people sober or help, but what I do promise is, like, the full spectrum of experience. And that's what I want you to be able to experience, is to be able to face the grief and the pain and all those things, and to be able to face it in a party environment, which I think is much better than sitting around and thinking about it. I kind of use partying as a portal into, like, exposure therapy for things that can be really uncomfortable. And how do we, like, create environments where we actually do feel loved and safe and belong, but can experiment with those things?
I've had the privilege of going to several conferences with a company or a group of friends. They've now become friends, but women who put on sober in the city events. And so it's this hybrid oven of conference and socializing and connection and learning and growing and exploring. And we've done static dance, we've done drumming circles, we've done sound baths. I'm trying to think of some of the other cool things we've done. And that has expanded my idea of what fun. Oh, silent disco, that type of thing. And so,
Yes.
we forget that these things are still available to us. And partying becomes such a label of one way of doing things. And I love the party within because it's unique to us and we expand on the idea of what it means to fully enjoy
Yes.
the life that we choose.
And for anyone who's listening right now who might have many feelings about the word party, it's good if you do. I always like to start with a little bit of etymology because party itself, the word is a paradox and it's actually a contronym, which means the word means its own opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So we can tend to think of party as, like a get together, right? Or a belonging or connecting. But partir, the phrase is like to split. And actually you think of like originally like a legal party, was like a single person or people splitting off from a group and then becoming a hunting party. And so it was kind of people gathering, but it originally was kind of like a split off. And so the word has evolved and changed a lot. And only in the past about 150 to 200 years has it really started to mean, what we might, alcohol and drugs. But the word itself has a very interesting history of being both belonging, but also kind of like a split off. And that we can go to escape our regular day-to-day life and go to an ecstatic dance or go to a breathwork class, that there's some sort of altered state that still occurs in a party, I think is important. I don't think it has to be there, but, like, allowing yourself that possibility that can still be a party for you.
Mm. Yes. Yes. It's so good. I love that. Thank you for the background because you're right. We think about an entity, a party, that legal term of one person, this party versus another party. And yeah, it's morphed into something that it means something different to everyone, I think.
Yeah, and
And
I always say there's only one wrong way to party, and that's, like, alone in your room at the end of the night, which for me, that's what would happen, right? It was I'd have a great time out, and I would go back, I'd be lonely, and then call the dealer, and so I have an 8 ball of cocaine in my house, and I was like, "What am I doing? This is not partying." And so, that is the one thing that I do resist when people call that partying. I said, "That's to me, that's not partying. So let's stop calling that partying, and everything else is fair game."
yeah, interesting because you're right that and so many people when it comes to alcohol, we have this misconception as we look at the people in our world and we say, well, I'm the only one that overdrinks. No, the reality is that so many of those people in a social setting will have one or two drinks and seem very controlled. And then they will go home and they will feel that disconnection, that loneliness. They didn't feel the way they wanted to, or they held back. And now they're looking for something else, and it's leading to this maladaptive coping or this self soothing technique that ultimately is not healthy.
Yes. What kind of trends are you seeing in terms of, we've got to experience this great kind of awakening of non-alcoholic drinks and sobriety that kind of swept the nation, which I think is really good in a lot of ways. But yeah, what are you seeing in terms of trends of people that are making their way to you? Are they still as self-conscious? Do they feel more accepted?
Yeah. Oh, I think definitely. So I've been alcohol free for 10 years.
Yeah.
And in 2015, there really weren't the types of programs and awareness or even drinks that are out there now. So often people will ask me, well, is it okay to have a non alcoholic beer? And I always say two things. One, the question is it okay for you? And that's where they really have to start. They have to do the self-reflection of, does this feel triggered? Does this feel too much? Am I seeking to replace this in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way? And am I using it to fit in versus to belong? So those are things that only the person can answer. But I also have to share that I wasn't faced with that choice. The only non-alcoholic beverage that was really around in 2015 was O'Doul's. Nobody was drinking that. And so this entire evolution of the connection to something that is really a replacement, these alcohol-free spirits, I think it's fascinating, and I'm so glad that we have choices. We know that our nervous system feels safer with choice. So that's
Yes.
a big part of it is that empowered choice that we do have options. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think that again, depends on the person. But I have to say that I didn't come to that choice until I was maybe 2 or 3 years alcohol free because it wasn't an option. And then
Yes.
I do think so, I trained with Annie Grace, and her company is This Naked Mind.
Mhm.
And so a few
It's
years
one of the
ago.
first books that I read that was
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really important to me. Yeah.
Yes, and, I didn't know any alcohol-free movement until I discovered her about 3 or 4 years into my alcohol-free journey, and then I was like, "What? People are talking about this?" And so she, asked each of us as coaches trained by her to put our own statement of integrity, and so I love the idea of a "this naked mind" because to me, now that I've experienced life without substances, I want to be experiencing it authentically.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes where the non-alcoholic, drinks or the trends can get people confused is, well, do I use something with THC? Do I do adaptogenic herbs? Like, am I altering the way that I feel? And again, I think it really depends on people's growth journey as they choose sobriety. So, how do you define sobriety for you? And what is your growth journey? Are you at a point where you want to explore other ways to experience life? Or do you want to stay away from microdosing or ayahuasca or THC laced drinks? Like, again, I'm not here to judge people. I'm here to help people get in touch with their own empowerment when it
Yes.
comes to choosing an alcohol free life.
Well, and that word empowerment, I think is really good and maybe a good transition into what I've tried to do with the party within is because I was having so many of these same questions,
Mhm.
right? And I'm actually someone who, was fully sober, but now I do drink on occasion. But party within is about shifting from a consumption based mindset to a creation based mindset
Mm.
and moving from instead of thinking that I need to even have an alcohol free drink in my hand when I walk into there, or thinking that I need to consume something before I can be on the same level as everyone else at this party. How do we replace those beliefs in our brain and our body?
Mm.
And it's not well, it's a 7-stage process. It's not clean or simple for everyone, but there are many different pathways that can get you into that. I'll kind of spoil it, but you one of the biggest ways is getting out of your own way and head and realizing how can you be of service, right? The party within us, here's the clutch, is like, it's not about you've got this inner confidence and you're bright. It's, are you willing to be of service to something bigger than yourself, that being the party, that environment, the ecstatic dance, are you able to tap into that energy in whatever space you're in? And you can walk into any room and be in any place and feel like you are not having to just wear the armor of your own confidence, but finding a way to be of service to the people and the energy in that space.
Yeah, so I'm gonna piggyback on what you said with armor because I think that we might make the connection, Evan, and let me know if this feels true to you, but you use that word armor, which I think is so powerful. So rather than armoring up to enter into a connection with other people, we're dropping that mask and we're showing up as our authentic self. And that's where that real belonging and connection comes from.
Yes. So that's what stage 4 of the party within, it's called drop the armor. And, and this is hard. I think this is hard for everyone. I think it's especially hard for men, but I think, women have a very, intense type of armor and a toxic positivity that they are often asked or saddled with
Mhm.
over the experience of a lifetime. And to let go of that, I have to be happy or I need to be the person that's holding the energy in this space. Letting go of that is can be really difficult too. Do you sometimes feel the need to be that still?
Yeah, I think for me, I I don't personally struggle with that. It's interesting. I was just taking one of my groups through. I don't know if you're familiar with Coach Shirzad and positive intelligence, but he talks about the saboteurs and the sages. And I am not naturally, which a lot of women do fall into the role of being like a pleaser. That's not me. If anything, I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
the disruptor. So,
Yeah.
what I have found though, without alcohol and finding my own party within, that the connection with people is the excitement for me. That curiosity about learning your story. Like this is why I love to podcast. I'm like, I can't wait to talk to Evan about how did you come up with this idea? What does it look like for you? How are you experiencing this? How are you putting the pieces together? So that is to me is not a false sense of positivity. It's that warmth of connection. And so when I show up in a room and I'm energized by the other people, it's a natural high.
Yes. Yes. And so an example of this, I got the opportunity to go to one of my friend's weddings in Tuscany last summer.
Mm,
And, it was like in at a vineyard, just like wine flowing everywhere. And I was, not drinking and not really interested in that. And I brought with that a still the idea it was a lot of my college friends. And I was the person who was like start the pregame and I was the person who would, get those things going. And so I brought little playlists of, like, songs that we used to play in college, and I would literally, like, just, like, walk up to, like, random tables or groups, and I'd, like, put on the little playlist, and I would just, like, I'd be like, "Let's do" let's do a power hour minutes," but I would, like, just take shots of water, but with
mhm.
them, but I was creating this feeling of I get to be on the same energy of you regardless of what I'm consuming. And I'm coming from a place of creation because I'm bringing this, like, energy into this space.
Mhm.
And yes, in 1 or 2 places, maybe I was, like, overcompensating a little bit looking back on it, but I do not regret that at all. And I would always rather be the person who was, like, bigger, louder, took the risk to create connection than to shirk off and disappear and make myself small because I couldn't drink or I couldn't be on the same level as them.
Yeah, I think that's such a pertinent point because so many people feel that I was the person who always started the party, or I was the wine connoisseur, or I was the one who made the best cocktails and had all the paraphernalia. And where's my identity now? And so I love this connection to focusing on our true identity when it comes to that party within. So, will you do me a favor? Will you go through those 7 steps and will you just
Yes.
kind of touch on them?
Yes, and I'm just gonna pull this up too because I always sometimes I mess up some of these. So, um,
It's so connected to you want to start talking about the next thing because you're just like, oh,
yes.
yeah, it sparked that idea.
Yeah. So Party Within, 7 stages. I'm gonna actually read through them all in succession, and then we'll go back through them.
Awesome.
So, stage 1 is detoxify positivity. Stage 2 is make peace with ghosts. Stage 3 is spark the party within. Stage 4 is drop the armor. Stage 5 is find your tribe. 6 is host your ceremony. And number 7 is party for life.
Mm.
So, this is based off of it's interesting because this came after I just started hosting habit groups for my friends because I was coming out. I'd been working for a music label, got fired during COVID, and basically was like, I'm never going back to work for anyone again. So what am I going to try to do? I was like, I'm just going to try to create value for the world. And so I asked my friends on social media, what do you want help with? And they always wondered how I was, would party on the weekends, but still was doing fitness and things like that, and just started to help people. And realizing that I was doing some of these things subconsciously, but I had no way to connect a lot of them. And I still had a lot to learn, as I went through this, but it's based kind of off, like, you might call it, like, the alchemical process, like alchemy
Mhm.
of kind of these ancient processes of breaking things down into their parts and then rebuilding them back together to reconstitute something that was greater than the parts. And honestly, one of the ones that people struggle with the most is step 1, this detoxify positivity, which is creating space for clarity. This means sometimes I do week-long programs, month-long, depends on the person, but this is oftentimes cutting out social media, all alcohol and drugs, eating completely clean, um, cutting out podcasts, cutting out everything except for oftentimes I ask people just listen to classical music, just go on walks, and just really go back to clearing out what is actually positive coming from your own brain that is not being consumed.
Mm.
And it's beautiful, but it's also I don't like to call it like a dopamine detox itself, where I'm just talking about positivity itself, but your dopamine receptors do start to come back to baseline.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wrote down, like a dopamine fast. Like,
Yeah.
and it is true that when we are in this fast-paced, consumer-laden world, and we're in this culture that instantaneous gratification, like, we don't even know up from down until we get quiet and we move away from that outside influence. And I would imagine that people not only struggle with the mechanics of doing that, but I know for me, I was wildly uncomfortable to be with the thoughts in my head. It was one of the reasons I drank because it wasn't a very nice place. I was my worst bully, you know? And so that learning how to accept both the toxic things we're saying to ourselves, but also the positive things, and bringing awareness to that. That's going to be a challenge, probably a lifetime.
Yes. And I will note that, so a big part of my process is writing. So every question has 7 journal questions that are a part of this kind of for every day, and that I tell people from the get-go, and you've probably seen this too. By the time people come to me, they're in all different stages, but I tell them it's probably gonna take 2 to 3 years for some of these practices to really integrate themselves into your body. And don't expect this to make sense right away. Like, and that's the best is I've been doing this long enough now where I have people calling me from weddings, like, 3 years later, and they're like, "I finally got it." It's really clicked through. But to be patient with this, and that anyone offering, like, an instant solution to these things, I would just be very cautious to that. Because in my experience, while it might feel instant, that kind of change is often not sustainable.
Yeah, yeah, and I work, in a as a contract coach for a company, and we do a 90-day program, and then we offer beyond 90, so we go into the next 9 months, and it's fascinating because the challenging part is that people do feel that relief because they're no longer engaged in the sabotage and the dangerous behaviors and the things that were, creating so much pain. And just that relief enough it alone is often enough for people to say, "Oh, I'm good." And it's like, "Oh, babe, yeah, let's come back to reality. This is a drop in the bucket, and we got a lot of drops to put in to create lasting change."
Yes. So yeah, so in that first stage of that clarity, uh, it transitions pretty well into stage 2, which is make peace with ghosts.
Mm.
And I used to call this stop chasing nostalgia, but
Mm.
I think the making peace is important because to let go and to make peace with these past identities, um, those things that maybe no longer serve us, making peace with them without vilifying them and like realizing some of these things are going to pass away and become ghosts and they might still be with us and they're still going to show up from time to time. And how do you make peace with these identities without pretending they don't exist?
Mm.
And that kind of acceptance I notice allows people to, again, to more sustainably come back again and again to like rework these ideas instead of constantly being in the yin yang of failure.
Yeah, that's such a good one because I think the closest that I have, I love the way that you flesh this out and the language behind it because it's really powerful. I mean, I sometimes will say to people, like they'll say like, I don't know why I'm grieving alcohol, and I said because and it wasn't all bad. Like you can't just say like, oh my gosh, I drank for 40 years and therefore those 40 years are a wipeout. No, I had my children during that time. I went on amazing vacations. I experienced all kinds of fabulous things. There was joy, there was grief, there was love, there was so many things that I'm not going to toss that out. I tell people, I used to be 15. I don't need to be 15 anymore, but there's nothing wrong with being 15. 15 is great. Lots of good things happen when I was 15. But I'm not going to be 15 again. But I don't have to say, 15 was bad. I'm never going to be 15. No. And that's the way I look at the identity of having been someone who used to drink. I used to drink.
Yes. Yes. That your clients, people you work with are so lucky to have your perspective. I think I just and I have to be cautious on this too, but I do end up talking to some people that are just really heavy on the, you know, this is a toxic substance that's terrible and it's destroying everyone around you and things like this. And I while there might be truth in that, I think it creates a world in which when you step out, if your beliefs are alcohol is only toxic and it's bad for everyone who does it, and you see a bunch of other people having friends and enjoying themselves and having fun with it, it creates this identity that they're all lying and they're all fake and they're all like bad people. And it creates this world in which everybody is insane except for you. And I think it that really can be self-destructive in the long run.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because definitely, I went through my own phase where I did a lot of judging.
Mhm.
And, the way that I sometimes will talk about it, Evan, is that alcohol is not chasing you down. It's not out to get you. It's sitting on a shelf. Your story about it, your attachment to it is about you. It's not about what's in that bottle.
Yes. Yes. And speaking of what's in the bottle, what's in you, stage 3 is spark the party within.
Yeah.
So this one is about starting to replace those things that normally maybe you would have reached for consumption first into creation first. So I call it a wellness bender, and it's a 21-day like bender for wellness, which is, um, you know, dancing every morning for 3 minutes and and there's a meditation after that. There's like a cold shower every day. So like even if it's 1 second of cold water of getting in and sort of doing of creating that. But there's these 7 habits that are part of this wellness bender that start to teach you that you can start to feel things in your body physically that are coming from creation, not consumption.
Mm,
And this part was missing, I think, from my early times is I was trying to do everything in the head, and you can't do everything in the head.
yeah,
The body will always override
yeah.
what happens up here. And so this is a process to rewire subconsciously, but actually like physically in your body to start to like, oh, I can actually that is so cool. It usually happens on a day like 16 or 17 after people have been dancing every day, like grudgingly being like, and they're just like, they show up and they're just like, I am grooving. And it's cringe, but it's so cool just to see people break through their own idea of what they needed to be happy.
Well, my audience knows this about me, but this resonates so much because I talk about how when I was drinking and I stopped drinking, I was like, wait, I have a body? I have emotions? Like, my entire world consisted in my head logical, reasoning, turning parts of my brain off, drinking because I was thinking too much. And gradually, gradually did I start to recognize, and the first thing I did was I went to nutrition school, which was in hindsight like perfect for me.
Yes.
Because talk about focusing on the body. I thought I was just going to go and learn, which I did. But we had a hands-on functional part, and so we palpate people's body and almost like muscle testing, and so it was so wild for me because I was so in my head. And I just recently completed a nervous system course, which is a through Jessica McGuire, so it's a trauma-informed sequencing for nervous system and never wanted to do anything with trauma. I was like, I'm not a therapist, but somehow I stumbled into this. And again, it was just the right thing to help me really start to share with clients the valuable piece that we're missing. And that
Yeah.
is the body, and that is the nervous system. And that is always going to be the wisest part of this is where we have to start. And I
Yes.
missed that for so long. And my early
Yes.
clients, I apologize.
Yeah, oh, and same, and I've actually gone back sometimes to some of my first when you become a coach, I think coaches rightly get a lot of crap for, "Who what are you doing going out and helping people?" But I do really commend everyone that has the courage to go out and just try to support and to help, and to fill in the gaps that our health system and other systems are just, like, not able to fully touch. But I get in my early years on social media, I now realize it was good for my engagement, but just so much hate of like, who are you trying to teach people how to party and like party sober? Like, what a worthless thing. And just, it was 90% hate. And nowadays, I get maybe one or two, like everything is so different now, which is really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I feel that. That's unfortunate. And I think that, some of it is ignorance and some of it is, just trying to figure out, oh, why does that feel threatening? And I think that's a fascinating part. And I try to, since I've been podcasting now for 4 years, I'll go back and I'll be like, hey, I just had a paradigm shift. Like, I just realized this thing that I've been talking about. I got new information. I have new experiences. I can't wait to tell you what's shifted.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. Like, people that like, I'm so grateful to be around people that want to update when new information comes and when new experiences come.
Yeah.
But uh, I have many spiritual practices, but I read the Tao Te Ching every morning. Are
Mhm.
you familiar with
No.
the Tao at all? So, Chinese tradition of sort of writing and it kind of connected with yin yang, are a little bit Taoist, but it's a lot about like a more kind of like feminine energy of the way to move through the world of allowing and moving, and talks a lot about things that are dead are dried and rigid and stiff, and things that are flowers and things that are young and blooming and growing, they're adaptable and flexible and they shift and they change. And we had this idea that like as we grow we know more and more and we become rigid, but it's all about the unlearning.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm always very I emphasize the first thing with my clients, and I do it here today, is like, I know less now than I did when I started, but I have the humility to realize that and just share kind of my unlearnings with all of you.
Ooh, so cool. Yeah, I read Mark Nepo every morning, and so he has a
Nice.
blend of,
Yeah.
the Book of Awakening. He has a blend of the Tao and Buddhism and Judaism and Christianity, and, yeah, he's such a cool guy. But yeah, I think that is so valuable. I talk to my clients about the act of becoming and unbecoming. And so we are becoming that version of us, but we're also going back to that version of us, but we're unbecoming some of these negative learned patterns. And so it's this beautiful flow that is very different than, like you said, that dry, rigid, this is the way. Yeah, it's it. We can get stuck there
Yes.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and so again, transition step number 4, drop the armor.
Yeah.
So, what is authentic confidence without faking it?
Mhm.
How what does a non-performative social life look like? Spoiler alert, there's not one. As Shakespeare says, the world is a stage and all men are players. Like, there's no way to exist without performing a little bit, I think. But how does that performance come from a place of who you are right now and not that ghost you were before? And like you said, if like, what is there an unbecoming in what that looks like? And so for me, what I've been struggling with, but I felt like I get better at this last year. I actually took about 6 months off from coaching and from a lot of things and learning. I'm somebody who's always like hosting and creating and doing and like being and just being invited to things. A lot of my friends have had kids and allowing myself to go and just be invited to go babysit, to show up quite different from how I used to, which was my need to, like, manipulate and control the situation. So that's been my struggle is my armor is my overconfidence, and to allow myself to be more invited in has been difficult, but so rewarding.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
I struggle with that a bit too, Evan. Very hooked on praise and, wanting to be seen and known and visible and make impact. And it does feel restful sometimes to step out of that role and be the attendee. I just hosted a retreat for my company and come right in my wheelhouse, like all my strengths. But I'm gonna go to a retreat next week where I'm going to attend, and I have a role, but I'm not running things, and so I'm gonna try to embrace more of that energy to step back and receive. I was talking to clients, it's so cheesy, but it was so fun. I was having them connect what we can learn from Olympic athletes about alcohol-free living, and one of the things that we forget is that rest period. And we
Yes.
effort so much to create this change we've wanted for so long. And, we forget that the tension in the rubber band or the tension in the muscle we grow when we are doing the movement of stretching and then letting go of that resistance.
Yes. Uh, even so and this is why the body is so important too is my experience of when I wanted to get fit, I was like, well, I'm going to work out every day for 2 hours and do as much as possible. And while I did get fit, I wasn't necessarily putting on muscle. I was just kind of always the same. And people would tell me, they were like, you're supposed to rest like 2 to 3 minutes between sets. And I was like, that's such a waste of time. I would never do something like that. I
I'm
will
here to
never do that.
maximize the
Yeah.
lifetime.
And for 7 years, people told me that. And I was like, zero chance. I'm going to rest.
Mm.
I've just started over the last couple months I think because I had this experience of when I did slow down, some things started to come to me. I was like, "Okay, maybe I'll give this a shot now." And I put on 7 pounds of muscle the past 2 months. Like years of not being able to.
Some of us are slow learners, Evan.
Yes. Well, I always say, like, I don't identify with any label other than persistent. I am a persistent mother effer. And when I was first having, like, panic attacks from my drinking and I was living in New York and I, like, stumbled out of the subway because I was, like, white out from, like, being so hungover for the day before, I tried to start to meditate because I had heard I think Dan Harris, who wrote the book 10% Happier, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um
Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, I think was his
Yes.
first one.
Yes. I started listening to his podcast and I would try and I couldn't sit with my thoughts for 30 seconds. But I would go during I was working for a startup, I would go and sit in my car sometimes and just, like, pull the seatbelt on and, like, force myself to sit for 3 minutes and whatever, and it took me 10 years of persistence, of that. I would host meditations at my office, and I would invite people to meditate with me, and I realized that worked really well because I was getting validated for creating something, but it tricked me into starting to learn how to meditate, and now I'm on, I think, day 506 of consecutive meditation.
Wow.
It's part of my life, it's so important to me, and but it took me, that was 2015, so yeah, 11 years.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're modeling persistence because, like you said, this journey, if we want to create lasting change and we want to drop the armor, we want to spark that party within, that's going to take the consistent repetition. It's going to take, you know, choosing the right path again and again. I mean, there's so many beautiful metaphors that come to mind. But it really is, it's so hopeful to remind people that even things that feel hard now, with persistence and with awareness and with kindness and self compassion, we can move toward them, even if it
Yes.
takes us years. So what? We're here for 10 years anyway.
Yes.
You were going to spend these last 11 years doing something. You might as well start a meditation practice.
Yes. Yes. And we don't have to do this alone. That's another thing that I think is important to say, and transition to number 5, which is find your tribe. And this is about thinking about what are both the people, but the environments that you're going to be around that are gonna support this version of you that has this, that can drop the armor, right? Who are those types of people? And so this involves, again, a lot of journaling and sort of thinking about who are these people for you, but one of the ways I like to think about this for people is what do you want to feel more of? So how about for you, Terry? Like what is an emotion or thing that you're looking to feel more of in your life right now?
Yeah, I want to feel more connection, more joy from within, more patience.
Awesome. So I heard connection, joy, and patience. So what I would offer to my clients is, get out your notes in your iPhone or whatever and write down questions that relate to those topics. So if you're at a dinner party, so you mentioned joy. For 5 years, my go-to question is what's bringing you joy in your life this week? It's my first question because I like joy. When you ask that question, regardless of whether they felt it or not, you are creating, and this is where we get a little woo-woo, but like you're creating a portal for joy to exist by asking that question. And if you're constantly asking, like, oh, how was the traffic on the way over? Or if you're constantly asking questions that are going to bring negative responses, don't be surprised if that's what your life constantly feels like. And this is not toxic positivity because I will ask things like, you know, where are you feeling connection and not feeling connection in your life right now? Right? Giving people an option to not just be in the positive, but to be in authenticity around connection as a concept. And so that would be if there's one takeaway that anyone has from this today, if you're not going to do anything else, it's write down, think of the emotions that you want to be more in relation to, and think of questions that you could ask that are going to bring that into your life. And you will be amazed in 2 to 3 weeks when those things become present in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, so good because we do a pretty robust gratitude practice in the company that I work for, and there's so much great science and neuroscience behind how gratitude works. And we know that even in when it feels woo, like I'll talk to people, this is a high level, high achievers, they're not familiar with things like positive affirmations and gratitude practices. And so it's so fun to help them see like it's going to feel like magic, but it's actually your very powerful brain and your body responding, your reticular activating system. Like you have this capability, and what you think about, you bring about.
Yes.
I mean, where attention goes, energy flows. And so ask yourself what you want to feel more of. And then you get to create that. And that creative part is what's the most exciting. I think that's what makes people feel alive.
Yes. Yes. And moving into that, so how do we take this feeling and kind of this like one-off thing and turn it into something that is sustainable or more solid? And so stage 6 is host your ceremony. And this can be, it used to be I would have people just host like one party or one event. but I try to be more ambitious with it. I'm trying to create something sustainable. So this is building off those things that you wanted to feel before. Maybe it's more connection, more joy. What is something that you can be doing or hosting on a weekly, monthly basis that is related to that thing, that wherever you go, wherever you meet, if you have a conversation about that thing, be like, "Yo, I host this." So the example I use is when I moved to LA, I was like this New York guy, and I was not really into any of the LA stuff, but I know they liked astrology.
Mm.
So, we had some friends that were kind of in, and she was into astrology, and I was like, "Why don't I just lean into this?" And so we started hosting a moon circle every full and new moon on the beach in Venice Beach. And I called it a skeptic's moon circle because I would invite all of my, like, New Yorker people who are like, "This is all BS," but we would have a very, like, practical, like, non-astrology explanation of just what was happening. What are these archetypes that exist in the world, and do you flow with this archetype or not? And it became this thing where it started pretty small. Pretty soon we had 50, 70 people showing up. And then we had music and we had yoga and and it became this group of friends that everywhere I went, I could invite someone to this thing that was it was, I didn't have to think about, it was a lot of work, but it was like a ritual. It was a ceremony that people could come and take part in. And anyone can do this. It could be a book club. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It can be, we go on a walk around the block on Fridays at 3 PM. Like, that is it. So, just creating something for you that feels sustainable and doable, that's gonna create people around you that when you go to that wedding and it's awkward and you don't know who to talk to, you say, "Hey, I host this thing or I do this thing. Do you wanna come?"
Yeah, it's such a great tangible thing to assign people as they're moving through this because as we're getting more connected to what is for us, the people that our vibration changes and we attract those people. And so, yeah, how cool to think, a moon circle for skeptics. Like that's so fun. I do host a Sober Edge book club because I want to create community. I love to read books. I love to talk about books. And, it's just for women, but, inviting women into that space is powerful because it is the place where we all get to collaboratively connect and create that.
What have you been reading lately?
So we just finished a novel. We don't read a lot of novels. We finished a novel called The Last Bookshop, which was fun. And then The Lost Bookshop, sorry. And then we're going to be reading Lauren Faye's memoir, Blurred Lines.
Oh, yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's a
Nice.
friend, and,
Yeah.
so she's gonna come in, as an author spotlight for our this month, and we read the memoir Awake by Jen Hatmaker in December, so we've been at it for about 2.5 years, so we've read quite a few books.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So this is I'm about to I right before we got on here, I was recording my a TikTok around just putting I was having some fears about I'm gonna be 40 this year. And after again taking some time off, I moved cities. I moved from LA back to home to Chicago. And you know, Keep the 40, I think especially is just a very interesting time in people's lives of there's this family life and there's this friend life and there's a lot of separateness, and I'm rebuilding my social life at 39, and I'm gonna have, like, a tribe by 40 is what I'm calling it. And I'm a little ashamed of being, like, a party coach, and I'm realizing I'm someone who let my tribe, um, deteriorate a little bit. And so I was, like, talking about some fears around that, and as soon as I wrote out the fears, I was like, "Evan, you actually, like, you have all of these things, you just are, you know, like anything else, I'm so hard on myself." And but also really, this is my way to share what I'm doing with the world and show people that even people that I'm extremely confident, very outgoing, have hundreds of people on my phone that can call at any time, and I still struggle with my social life sometimes. So, I think it's really important to put that out in the world.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. Like, I just realized you could be my kid. I have a 40-year-old.
Oh, awesome.
Here we go. No wonder we're
Yeah,
getting along.
yeah, that's great.
I don't think did we get through all 7?
So 7, the last one here is party for life, and it's how to live a social life that's sustainable. And this is we've kind of already touched on a lot of but this is just reinforcing growth mindset. The idea that as soon as you get to 7, you need to go back to 1 again. And, like and do the detox and to go through these things because you are kind of a different person already. You are always becoming. And that, I you might look up 3 years from now and have had a really beautiful life, and you look up and you're like, "Oh gosh, I don't know if I wanna be this person right now." And that's okay. To not look at this process or that your willingness to change as something that you're going to regret, but as a, like, stage that I I wanna party when I'm 65, I wanna party when I'm 95, and what does my life look like that that's possible for me?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, I think we evolve, and we get to recognize that. I just was presenting at the retreat I hosted, your own hero's journey. So we know the archetype of the hero's journey, but we think about exactly what you're saying is when we get to that return and that transformation, we go back to the next thing. And we never start over, we start from where we're at. And
Yes.
so that beautiful recognition of the through line.
Begin again with experience is
Ah,
how
oh, I like that.
yeah, begin again with experience.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been such a fun conversation.
This is so fun. I'm grateful that there are people like you that are doing this work, and I think it was always a little bit around, but I just remember feeling so alone when I was starting a lot of this stuff, and I think it's just really cool how much is out there. But I do wanna close with well, and if you have more questions, please go ahead, but I wanna emphasize something that I don't believe we touched on, but I think is important, which is that partying shouldn't always feel good and great, and, like, you're allowed to do things you regret, and you're allowed to be naughty, and you're allowed to, like, still be messy in your life, and parties are a place for that to happen, and just because you've removed alcohol from your life, um, I believe that there's this primal, like, Dionysian need to, like, be in the darkness, and if you can't find places that, like, allow your body and your mind to go and be in that space, I think the pull back to, "Well, this alcohol provided that for me, and so I'm just gonna go back to that." And that's where I see people with, like, 5, 7, 10 years of living pretty happily alcohol-free lives, but change that is because uh, they've not allowed themselves to be, like, messy or naughty in different ways. And so I can't tell you what that's gonna be, but just offering that oftentimes can be a really good release valve.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Thank you for sharing that because it is true that if we live a repressed life, like, so when I became a nutritionist, people just assumed that I gave up sugar. I had already given up alcohol. So now I give up alcohol and sugar. And at one point in my journey, I stopped drinking coffee for 7 years. Now I drink coffee again. I love coffee. But people would be like, "What do you do for fun?" And it's like, uh, my life is nothing but fun because, the things that I explore and the adventurous side and connecting in new ways and building and creating feels vibrant to me. But I think you're exactly right. We think that the only way to party is to cut loose in ways that are disconnected to our authentic self, and we have to embrace that is part of our authentic self.
Yes.
And if that's
Yeah.
missing, then that core part of us that is missing, yeah, we can't evolve fully, and it is harder to
Yes.
sustain when
Yeah.
we're cutting a part of ourself off.
Yes. I had the opportunity twice to go to Burning Man, the 10-day festival in the desert. I've gone 4 times. First 2 times, very alcohol drenched, acid, everything. Amazing experiences, but very different, and then 2 times completely sober. And even during the sober times, there was, like I and I hope this is okay to share, but, there was like a naked bike ride where
Oh, yeah.
everyone was just, like, fully naked and, like, riding around, and for some reason, I still even in everything, I realized it was, like, when I'd been naked or I'd been drunk, I could be naked around people, but when I was sober, what does that feel like? And I just remember I was, like, jumping on a trampoline, naked at Burning Man, sober, and just feeling, like, that shame fly out of my body. And so just offering that as, like, a possibility or, like, what things can feel like for you when you feel ready to do things like that, highly recommend that you find ways to just still be fully expressed.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm so glad we connected. I love this framework. I think there's so much wisdom here and there's so much possibility and there is a real connection to our humanity. And that is where living a life without alcohol needs to land.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for, yeah, your wisdom and your experience that you bring to your clients and just people, and I'm sure, the people that know you and are around you are stoked to be in your party energy too. So,
Yeah, I
thank
love
you
that.
very
I
much.
love that. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
claim my party energy
Yeah.
all around. So, before you go, Evan, please tell us how people can connect with you and anything you want to share where people can get some of this party energy from you.
Awesome. So, yeah, if you just Google the party coach, you'll find my website. It's partycoach.me, TikTok, Instagram, everything there. But my thing that I always offer to people is, like, my mantra is serve the party, save humanity. And so if you take anything from this, know that it's your responsibility to keep the party going in your communities and your life. And if you just go and share one of those questions, or if you just host one little ceremony and take this out of here, you will have just made me very happy, but I also, I think, have served humanity in a way that you might not fully understand, but it's really important.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks for such a unique conversation,
Thank
and I
you.
hope we connect again soon.
Of course, party on.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.